Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today we are discussing House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon is an American fantasy drama television series, a prequel to Game of Thrones, which ran between 2011 and 2019. It is the second show in the franchise created by George R. Martin. It's also created and I believe showrun by Ryan Condal for HBO. Both are based on Song of Ice and Fire novels by Martin. Condal and Miguel Sapochnik are the showrunners. Most people that have watched Game of Thrones and know a little bit behind the scenes know that Miguel Sapochnik is known for directing some of the biggest action set pieces that were in Game of Thrones, the original show. So, I'm going to kind of put up front that there's probably going to be spoilers for Game of Thrones, the original show. So I'm not 100% sure how much we need to know versus don't know of this show versus the book. I'm just going to completely review the show off of the knowledge that I'm getting from the show. I have not read the book. I know there's a large subsection of fans and people in the community that are really intense into the knowledge of the Game of Thrones lore. I am not one of them. I'm just strictly the show guys. I'm a show guy. Not because I'm against it. I'm just saying that I just don't have time to do that at this point. So all of the uh, knowledge I'll be getting is from other podcasts and from watching the show as well, and obviously my own interpretation and opinions. But yeah, so most people that have watched Game of Thrones, the original show, remember Miguel Sapochnik from several of the big battle scenes at the end of the last couple seasons, as well as Hard Home, which was uh, one of the biggest action set pieces I think individuals had seen on the small screen since actually probably ever. That's the whole thing about Game of Thrones is if you're coming into this kind of blind and you're like, well, what was the deal with Game of Thrones? Why was it so um, popular, formulative, and why did it pave the way for storytelling going forward? Well, it had such a wide scaping, uh, epic tale of a story. It was impeccably acted. It was extremely well directed. For the first few seasons, I'd say seasons 1 through 6 were almost flawless, with the give or take a couple plot lines. That probably could have been a little bit more shifted. But other than that, the storytelling was so compelling. You're seeing things that are shocking, gasp, breathtaking, from the epic storytelling nature of it down to the audacity of, just the crazy bloodlines that are intersecting for better or for worse. So yeah, there's things that we were not prone to in American storytelling specifically that Game of Thrones introduces us to, and it puts fantasy and it puts betrayal and political intrigue all at the forefront, mixing a really nice blend of them all. And so just kind of my background with Game of Thrones was I had heard about it for seasons 1 through 3 and then binged them all. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing show. And then continued to watch it from season 3 forward. And so, just like a lot of people, I was disappointed in the last few episodes, specifically the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. The blockbusteriness. I've done other podcasts of covering Game of Thrones from all 8 seasons, and then we discussed the documentary as well, which was way more about the behind the scenes, not so much about the storytelling. But I think most people would agree that the way that Game of Thrones ended was on a disappointing note, mostly because of the fact of people were. I think most people would say that the showrunners uh, Dan and DB Weiss have they they rushed the ending, and so that's what the whole problem for me was at the ending. It's not necessarily where we ended up, it was that it felt so rushed. It felt there was the things that happened with the Daenerys Targaryen character that really turned her into, like I said, and we're going to talk about spoilers for Game of Thrones original, but they basically turned what we're watching is somewhat of a good individual turn bad and go mad with power. Now, for me, I could understand that coming into fruition. I could see that happening with this character, and they were talking. People had been discussing. Are we watching a Mad Queen? And honestly, they just kind of pepper that in right before the ending, before she actually does become the Mad King, the Mad Queen. I don't think that it was an organic storytelling tactic of telling the Daenerys Targaryen story. So thus it felt like a betrayal of the character for a big chunk of it, and I think it really turned a lot of people off, but not to the point where people aren't watching House of the Dragon. Now, I was kind of waiting for maybe one or two episodes to come through before I reviewed it. I was kind of taking a little break myself. Went on vacation and whatnot. I'll talk about it in the aftercast if you want to hear about it. But yeah, I wanted to watch a couple of the House of Dragons show episodes before I really got into it, because I knew I was going to review at least the first episode or a couple of them, and probably maybe the last if it reviews well. But yeah, so I think the first episode got around 10 million views within the first 24 hours or something like that, and that's extremely good for a show that kind of irreparably has a really bad reputation of the ending. But you know what? I think that the House of the Dragon has potential to possibly retcon the ending of Game of Thrones. Now, if anyone has watched Better Call Saul recently, now you know that it's without spoilers that it's a prequel just like this show is, but they are also adding information that you learn post the Breaking Bad show. So if the House of the Dragon does it, they might be able to sprinkle in narrative. They might be able to sprinkle in story beats and elements that could improve upon the ending of Game of Thrones. In my review, I said, I really think that one or two episodes would have been pretty beneficial to kind of explain the Mad Queen subplot. And I think for the most part, with having additional time with this person or additional time with the storyline, we can understand the motivations a little bit better. Now, I'm not saying that House of the Dragon is going to do that. I haven't read the books. I haven't listened. I'm trying not to listen to podcasts that have focus on the books, so I kind of go in clean and fresh, and unsullied, not knowing what's going to happen. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I definitely could see them kind of retconning a little bit of things that happened at the end of that. But then again, time can make things a little bit more difficult for that to happen. So let's continue on a little bit. So yeah, Condal, Miguel Sapochnik are the showrunners. It's based on parts of the novel Fire and Blood. The series is set about 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones and 172 years before the birth of Daenerys Targaryen. It portrays the beginning of the end of House Targaryen. I guess that means that they're going down. Sorry, I don't even know. I guess that's not exactly true, because we have Daenerys coming up later. I'm not sure if that events, but anyways, the events leading up and towards the covering the Targaryen War of Succession, known as the Dance of the Dragons. House of the Dragon received a straight to series order in October 2019, with casting beginnings in July 2020, principal photography starting in April 2021 in the UK. The series premiered on August 21st, 2022, with the first season consisting of 10 episodes, 5 days after its premiere. The series was renewed for a second season. Sapochnik departed as a showrunner after the first season, leaving Condell to serve as the sole showrunner for the second season. Now, I've heard that this was pre mutual on both the HBO and on Sapochnik. It's not like some sort of like he had to go or something like that, or some sort of like big scandal. To what I'm hearing was he was pretty burnt out on having to work so hard on Game of Thrones, the original show, that he has to, he's just tired. And I could totally understand that, especially because to my knowledge, he's cranked out a few movies as well. And, he's a pretty hard worker. So I could see him wanting to kind of step down and, let the rest of the show kind of run itself. But he is an executive producer as well. So yeah, the show, to my knowledge, I'm not going to talk about any too big time, any massive amounts of time leaps or anything like that, because I think it kind of gets a little bit more difficult to talk about without that happening. So we have Paddy Considine as King Viserys Targaryen. I'm not going to read too much of the descriptions of the different characters because I'm trying to keep it very loose, keep it very spoiler free for myself and for the viewer as well. But I will say the performances of Paddy Considine as King Viserys Targaryen, Matt Smith as Prince Daemon Targaryen, let me see, Millie Alcock as Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Emily Carey, Reese Ifans as Sir Otto Tower. All these individuals are the ones I recognize the most. I got to say that the performances on all of these individuals are pretty breathtaking for them to be able to step into the world of Game of Thrones and basically what feels like just man the ship. It feels like this. When I started watching House of the Dragon, the first episode, the second episode, I was like, wow, it's an odd, nostalgic feeling to watch this show again. Post pandemic, it feels like a time before all of the pandemic stuff happened, because it technically was, that was 2019 when all that went down. But and people had kind of turned their backs against Game of Thrones, but there is still some sort of like nostalgia that is really hitting with me with regards of just being back in Westeros. I enjoyed the feel of it. I enjoy the rapport, even though I know that we're not going, or technically we're still going on George R.R. Martin's books, because he hadn't finished the post Game of Thrones, but he has finished the prequel. So technically we're still there. Just the rapport, the political intrigue, the kind of brashness of people. One of my favorite new individuals on here. I like everybody on the casting list, but one that always is catching my eye is Reese Ifans as Sir Otto Tower and Otto Hightower, and he's like your grade A Game of Thrones character that is on one end shaking someone's hand, and on the other he has the knife in the back ready to stab. It just feels like that character that really embodies the political intrigue and betrayal that I love so much about the show. I felt like the ending of Game of Thrones original turned into such a blockbuster that it wasn't even that much fun to watch anymore, because the first few seasons were working on more of a budget, and so they're not allowed to show the massive dragon scales, the massive battles, all of that stuff, all that goodness. But when it did happen, it became very it became special. But it felt like towards the end of the season that it just was not as present, for the political intrigue was not as present and not written as smartly for the last few seasons. So, yeah, that's probably what I'd say is being back in this world is it's fun. It feels nostalgic. So yeah, and Reese Ifans plays this character, the Hand of the King, basically the right hand man of the king, to a T. I'm just very surprised about where this Reese Ifans. I remember him from the Replacements. He was the replacement kicker, and it was one of my father's favorite movies back in the day. He used to watch it all the time. But I used to love that character, and I just wish he was in more stuff. He was the Lizard or whatever, and Spider-Man, and so um, he's just not used enough. And I think that this is an excellent use of his character. So let me hop into the first episode real quick, and we'll decide after that how much more we will discuss. The heirs of the dragon. With both his sons dead, old King Jaehaerys the first Targaryen convenes a great council to choose an heir. The Westerosi lords select Jaehaerys' eldest grandson, Prince Viserys, over his eldest grandchild, Princess Rhaenys. 9 years into his reign, King Viserys organizes a tournament to celebrate the Queen Aemma's Aaron's pregnancy, confident she is carrying his long-awaited male heir, which she technically is. The small council disregards Master of Ships Lord Corlys Valerian's warning that a triarchy and alliance of Essos's free cities threatens to cripple Westerosi's shipping lanes. Jesus, this is hard to say. Hand of the King, Sir Otto Tower, criticizes Viserys' brother and heir, Prince Daemon, played by Matt Smith, for his brutality as the City Watch commander. At the tournament, Sir Criston Cole, a common-born Dornish knight, outcompetes Daemon while Aemma dies in childbirth, which is a very difficult scene to watch. Newborn son Balon dies shortly after, which is very sad. But I believe this was discussed in the Game of Thrones original movie. Like I said, it's been a long time, and I honestly had no idea who to picture when they were talking about this. So now you can understand the whole family hierarchy. As the heir for a day, outraged, Viserys banishes Daemon from King's Landing and anoints his only living child, Princess Rhaenyra, heir to the Iron Throne. And in the whole aesthetic, I honestly, there's this whole like Rings of Power versus Game of Thrones CGI battle versus set design versus who's got the better show. First of all, I think it's apples to oranges. Second of all, they're two totally different aesthetics. They're so different in what they are. It's almost like comparing superhero movies to a degree, but it'd be like, some are gritty, some are campy, so and you can't really compare the two. And I feel like it's really difficult to compare the Rings of Power and the Lord of the Rings show to the House of the Dragon show. But was saying that, I think that the aesthetic and design of House of the Dragon is probably superior. It just feels so grungy and lived in and terrible to be back in that time. And that's what I feel like it should feel like when I watch Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. It's not a diss on the show. I've only watched one episode, but when I watched it, I was like, everyone is so damn clean. The elves, clean, sexy, looking good. What's it, the hobbits? Even the dirt that they have on them looks like it's just placed. It doesn't look like a grungy, nasty place. I mean, there's a nasty cow in the first Rings of Power show, but that's about as nasty as we get. And I understand that it's TV 14 as well. Know that if you're comparing the two, You're probably not going to have the sex. You're not going to have the betrayal. You're not going to have the stabbings. You're not going to have any of the violence that you get in House of the Dragon. Not to say it's any better, not to say it's any worse. I'm just saying that they're they're probably not going to hit that level of craziness with their show. So yeah, the first episode really establishes all of these characters. It establishes the king as kind of a guy that he needs help, and he's mostly trying to do the right thing the whole time, and then you see Otto Hightower scheming up in the back with his daughter, go help. You see, you're introduced to Queen Aema, and she seems like a great queen. You see Princess uh, Rhaenyra, and yeah, Princess Rhaenyra is free spirit, I guess, is would be what you'd say. She's some weird combination of like Danny and Maisie Williams' character. What the hell is it? Youngest Stark. God dang it, I can't remember. Whatever. Maisie Williams' character, Youngest Stark. Um, she combination of those two, and it's a good first episode. I think it's a great establishing episode. It's not like a super strong, compelling episode from like the charismatic uh, lines that you were used to getting in Game of Thrones original, but it still I think works really well. Matt Smith isn't just chewing up the scenery; he's loving everything he's doing, um, and yeah, you see how the succession line is going to happen um, throughout this world, and you kind of see how some people are starting to raise their hairs are starting to raise about the king, about I don't know if I agree with you, and the more people that are disagreeing with him, the more targets he's painting on his back. And so the second episode, The Rogue Prince, 6 months after Rhaenyra is named heir, Daemon illegally occupies Dragonstone, supported by the loyal City Watch's guards. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, Sir Otto Hightower sends in his daughter in the first episode to go quote unquote comfort the king and know that she is best friends with his daughter, and so that turns into a longer standing um, uh, that turns into a longer standing piece with the king versus his daughter. It's like if his daughter, Princess Rhaenyra, going to be cool with her best friend becoming basically her stepmom? I don't know. This Game of Thrones. Let's see. Second episode, The Rogue Prince. 6 months after Rhaenyra is, oh, and I forgot to say, the king is like getting cut by his own throne because apparently in the book is possibly written that he's not worthy and that the throne's trying to get him out of there. But then again, he is sitting on like like 1,000 swords that are going all behind him, and yeah, you're bound to get cut by something. Um, and he's got these like crazy blisters all over him. It's definitely not looking good. Second episode, The Rogue Prince. 6 months after Rhaenyra is named heir, Daemon illegally occupies Dragonstone, supported by the loyal city's watchguards. When Prince Admiral Craighar's Drar, known as the Crab Feeder, menaces the Stepstones at this Triarchy's behest, Rhaenyra's suggestion to show force is dismissed. She is instead relegated to appointing a new Kingsguard's knight. Ignoring others' advice, she chooses Sir Criston, the only knight with actual battle experience. Sir Otto's daughter, Lady Alicent, has been privately consoling Viserys since his wife's death. She advises that he and Rhaenyra discuss his kingly duty to remarry Lord Corlys, and his consort, Princess uh, Rhaenys, proposes that Viserys unite their Valyrian houses through marriage with their 12-year-old daughter. And it is like, bleh, like that's a horrible thing to do. That's a horrible thing to say. That's very just shocking and fucked up on multiple levels. But the more that the story goes on, it's like, unfortunately, that might have it might have saved their life depending on where the story ends. I'm not sure what's going to happen to them, but I'm pretty sure this decision is going to haunt him in the same way that Robb Stark made the wrong decision about marriage as well. Um, we all saw the red wedding, and so you know, uh, and it's terrible. You watch this like 12-year-old. I think she's probably younger. She's like, you watch this 12-year-old like walking with this grown ass man, and she's like all dolled up, looking like one of those pageant kids, and she's like, you won't have to wed me until I'm 14. It's like the king is, his head is like damn spinning right there, and I was like, oh god, it's just it's a whole shit show right there. Absolutely not. So, what do we have here? Uh, and her name is Leanna, I think. Meanwhile, the small council learns that Damon, proclaiming himself the true heir, stole a dragon egg and intends to marry his mistress, Messira. A lot of people have things to say about Messira's accent. It felt a little bit like stereotypical, quote unquote, like Asian stereotypical, but I think she is actually Asian, but I've seen her in other things. This actress was in Devs as the main actress, and she was not talking like this. So I'm not really sure what she was told to do. I'm just going to say that her accent, I think, was the first thing I've said about the show that I was like, I don't like that about the show. Um, Not to make or break or anything. I was just like, it's just straight up, I don't like it. So he Damon's proclaiming he's going to marry her as a second spouse. Sir Otto, because his original spouse he's just not into. Sir Sir Otto and detachment sail to Dragonstone to retrieve the egg. I gotta say that Messira, by the way, reminds me of Tyrion's girlfriend in season 4 and 5, I believe. Again, I forgot her name. I'm not gonna remember, but they kind of have like similar aesthetics, I guess. Rhaenyra follows on her dragon, Cyrex, and forces Daemon to renounce his false claims and return the egg to her. I love when they're talking in the old Valyria or something like that, or whatever the heck they talk. Um, I think they make it sound like a legitimate language. I know that they have like a legitimate language coordinator on there, but it really does sound like it. Viserys announces he will wed Lady Alicent, angered Lord Corlys, who then seeks out Daemon to propose an alliance. I gotta say, I like Lord Corlys' look, but I'm not sure I like his style with how he's kind of doing the betrayal. Um, so yeah, there are multiple time jumps happening from these episodes. I don't have the exact number right here, but there's about to be a substantial one here in a second, into the third episode. Second of his name. For 3 years, the conflicts in the southern steppe, yeah, 3 years, yeah, that is it. The conflicts in the southern stepstones region have escalated, and by this point, that uh, the king, yeah, like I said in the last episode, he has announced that he's going to marry Rhaenyra, his daughter's best friend, Alicent, Otto Hightower's um, daughter. So everything's going according to plan, according to the Otto Hightower plan. For 3 years, the conflicts in the southern Stepstones region have escalated. Lord Corlys and Prince Daemon battle Cragarys Drahar, which is the crab feeder, and his pirates without support from the crown, which remains neutral regarding the situation. Meanwhile, King Viserys planned a great hunt to celebrate his pregnant queen Alicent's son, Aegon II, birthday. And the Great Hunt is not so much a great hunt. By this point, I think we find out that King Viserys has lost two fingers, and basically the Great Hunt is them stalking a damn terrified elk down and tying it down so that they can just stick it with a damn spear. Anyways, King Viserys plans a great hunt, blah blah blah, for his second son's birthday. Rhaenyra, his daughter, resents the attention his father continually heaps on Aegon. Their relationship is further strained by the ailing king's insistent that Rhaenyra marry to form a strong alliance and protect the lineage. Right now, Rhaenyra is not looking good in the Game of Thrones spectrum of playing the game. Honestly, I think the strongest houses end up being like the Lannisters, the ones that kind of honestly try to marry within and spread who they're with. Like just playing the game does not seem to be what Rhaenyra wants to do at this point, and she's going to fight her way out of it. Whether it works or not, we're going to find out. And I think Alcock is doing an exceptional job of being regal but also stubborn during her scenes as Rhaenyra. So among the suitors is Lord Jason Lannister of Casterly Rock, a match Rhaenyra opposes. And to be honest, I kind of found him a little bit despicable as well. I don't remember what movie I saw him in, but I saw him in, I want to say like a horror movie recently. I can't remember off the top of my head who plays this, but apparently they use this actor's face for a second actor as well. Let me see. Jefferson Hall. Let me see what he was in. Oh, he was one of the reporters at the beginning of Halloween, the most recent remake of it. I remember that now. I was trying to figure out where that guy's face was. So familiar, but yeah. So they double this dude's face and make him a twin, and he's playing Jason Lannister, and another Thailand Lannister, I guess. So Lord Strong recommends that Rhaenyra wed Sir Laenor Valerion, Lord Corlys's son, to repair the rift between the two houses. On his brother Hobart's advice, Otto urges Alicent to persuade the king to name Aegon heir, which is his grandson. Furthering the High Tower's power and prestige, Viserys assures Rhaenyra she is the heir and can choose her consort. After which I find interesting that Alicent is both kind of playing the game as the mother, the queen, but she's also playing the role as the best friend, which shows that she still has some empathy for Rhaenyra. She could go mad with power, but for right now, she's still there for her. After Sir Vaemont Valerion pleads for the king's help, Viserys relents and sends aides to the Stepstones. Seeing the arrival of his brother's aid as the end of the opportunity to prove himself, Daemon uses himself as bait to ambush and slaughter the Triarchy, killing the crab feeder in the ensuing battle. In the battle, I gotta say, despite some of the disbelievability of it, I gotta say it was badass. I mean, Matt Smith swinging that sword, fucking whooping some ass, kind of getting shot a couple times with these arrows. I mean, he's not invincible, but he's pushing through the battle like he is. It's just a fucking shit show. And then they have the dragon coming down, and then it's just like you can tell that the money is on the screen. I've heard that they spent a buck ton on these episodes, and it definitely feels like big blockbuster action. But this has been the biggest battle that we've had with this series so far, and I'm here for it. I'm totally here for it. So let me know what you thought about House of the Dragon, the review, the show. It's the first 3 episodes. I know we're gonna have the fourth one coming up in a day or so, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm definitely going to finish it. And I know a lot of people are going to say in comparison to Rings of Power, which one's better. It's for me right now, they're so different. It's so hard to compare the two. I feel like I'm not loving Rings of Power, but I've only watched 1 episode. I'm like 1.5 episodes in on Rings of Power, so I need to finish that. I'm way more invested in the House of Dragon aesthetically for just the knowledge of knowing these characters as well, like where it's probably going to lead to, and knowing just the aesthetic overall. I know the rules of the world. There aren't just random elves running around and hobbits and all this random shit. I'm not as knowledgeable of Tolkien lore as I am with Game of Thrones. Not because I dislike it or anything like that. I've really enjoyed the Fellowship of the Ring. That one's the only Lord of the Rings I've seen in full, so I might have to go back and rewatch those to see what was really going on. But I know there's some sort of wonkiness where they got the rights to like half of the stuff, like the appendices, but they can't say like hobbits and all this other stuff, but they can say Sauron and they can say the rings. I don't know. There's some weird copywriting thing uh, uh, going on with it. It's like y'all spent $500 million and you still can't call them hobbits. It's like, oh my Lanta, I don't know what's going on. So um, I'm probably gonna have to watch the majority of the Rings of Power to kind of get an establishing repertoire of what is going on, who do I gotta cheer for, what are we doing, where are the rings, where's the power, that type of thing. Because right now it feels, this first episode of Rings of Power felt way more like The Witcher for me than Game of Thrones. Not a bad thing, like I said, just what I'm noticing. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. We'll find out. Let me know what you thought about the review. Let me know what you thought about House of the Dragon, first couple episodes. Again, only going to respond to things that are regarding the first 3 episodes. Don't be posting a whole bunch of stuff about book lore that isn't discussed in the first 3 episodes. I'd really appreciate that. But check us out on SoundCloud. Check us out on all the podcast players, YouTubes. LuckyDogPodcast.com. Be sure to check out the top 10 list. We are keeping an updated list of the top 10 movies that we are watching and of 2022. Eventually, at the end of the year, we are going to do the review for that. But if you want to know the top movies that we're enjoying this year, go ahead to LuckyDogPodcast.com. Scroll down to the bottom, you'll see the top 10 movies of 2022. Thank you for listening, watching Look It Up Podcast, and take it easy.